The only thing I get nervous about is shouting, screaming, like anything that's an actual scream. How do you do that and not damage the aria that comes after? And jumping off the building. Yeah.
Yeah. They should have somebody who screams off stage for you.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be nice? That would be great.
On the Dallas Opera Network, you're listening to Opera Box Score.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Wherever you are, however you're listening, it is America's talk radio show about opera. It's Opera Box Score. I'm your host, George Cederquist, joined by Oliver Camacho, Matt Cummings, Weston Williams, and Ashlee Hardgrave. All right, this week, the star of Opera Sarasota's upcoming production of Tosca, soprano Anne Toomey, goes inside the huddle with Oliver. But first, Opera America asks, what would you put in an opera time capsule? And we answer, oh, you mean in addition to pork scratchings? Plus, 2-minute drill. Tenor Nicky Spence breaks both of his legs. Was it Putin's GRU? Or if you're, that's a dreadful Russian accent. Or if you're watching via TDO, look, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. You want to get the full show. Stitcher and Spotify, you click follow. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, smash that plus sign. More platforms coming your way. That's in process. Email us those hot takes, operaboxscore@gmail.com. We are going to nag you about this again later on in the episode. You drop us a line. You get an OBS beer coaster. You get an OBS lapel pin. Just ask our listeners on the coasts who have been receiving merch this very week from yours truly.
Wow.
Collect them all. Get the lapel pin and the coaster. And if you write in again with a secret identity and a different mailing address, you can get another coaster, another lapel pin. And then soon you'll have enough for the whole household.
That's
you
Oliver
can start
Camacho.
your own rival podcast.
Oliver
with your
Camacho
own rival
feeling
merch.
it tonight. Great to see you on the show.
Nice to be seen.
Matt Cummings, swarthier than ever.
I'm here and I am wearing a sweatshirt.
And fresh from an
news
event
for
that we're going to
everyone.
talk about later on. Like literally something wonderful has happened.
We are
Get a tease
feeling
about it.
our Omicron hunker down, everyone.
Weston Williams.
Ah, yes, I am neither swarthy nor sweatshirted, but I am here in my closet, back from my extra little vacation, ready to go.
And Ashlee Hardgrave.
I am amped beyond belief because the Winter Olympics start in 25 days. I'm so excited.
Wow.
You are so amped, you don't even have a funny name.
Yeah. My Zoom died earlier and I had to sign out and sign back in. I'll change my name. Believe me, the next time you cut to me, it'll be something brand new. You'll love it.
As you know, we tape our show on Monday nights. By the time you get this on Wednesday, Thursday, depending on how you listen, the national championship will be in the bag. Currently, Alabama up 3-0 over Georgia. I'm going to regret mentioning this every single time. Georgia is for real. Georgia favored by 2.5 points on this game tonight.
Well tied.
We will see how that plays out. Let us talk some opera.
Huddle up. Let's go inside the huddle.
There is a production that you can watch right now of Swore Angelica from the Berlin Philharmonic. Apparently he was part of Kirill Petrenko's Karajan Academy with, in essence, young artists. Initially, the idea was for it to be an outreach program. And it stars our guest today, soprano Anne Toomey, as Swore, as Angelica. And this is available for, pay-per-view. And it's from Berlin. And it's directed by Nicola Humpel, and it has Katharina Daleiman as the aunt, the Tzia. And it's just one of those things that you have to watch it. Like, you can't believe how powerful, how intimate, how just deeply felt this performance is. It will make you cry. If you need a good cry. And it was released in February, just as we were going into lockdown. And it just feels like a piece that, was meant for, digital viewing, for viewing at home. before we got into a whole year or 2 years of this type of content. It predates the pandemic, though it was released in the pandemic, and it is so incredible. So I encourage you to watch it. We'll put a link on our show notes to this production. We're about to hear a little bit of that production led by Kirill Petrenko.
It was such a special project to me for so many reasons. I not only got to do a European debut, but then it was with a piece like that is so special, in a role that I felt like really fit my voice and who I am as an artist. Like, thank you for what you said, because that's what I strive for. I mean, that's what makes opera great. And then even beyond that, it was with such incredible people. I mean, Kirill Petrenko, there's so much buzz around him, and I'm going to fangirl for a second, but he deserves every bit of it. And it's such a rare thing. He's a true vessel for the art. And someone like him, you would imagine having this like incredible ego, and he doesn't at all. It's so genuine, and it's so passionate, and it's truly his gift. And we're really lucky to have someone like him in the opera world. And I feel so, it still kind of shocks me that was the opportunity I had.
Well, this thing, I mean, it came out during the pandemic, but was it produced during the pandemic? It's not clear because
it happened right before the pandemic. The performances were February 2020. And our process was unique because it was a longer process than I think. We had a good amount of time for a one-act opera. They decided this is like part of their educational outreach portion of their programming. And, usually that is a child's opera or something written for that. And
like Petrenko, Three Little Pigs.
Exactly. Exactly. And Petrenko, when he took over as music director there, he said, no, we're going to do real opera and I'm going to conduct it. And I just think, oh my God, thank you. Opera doesn't need to change. We just need to find a way to get it to people and to communicate it to them that's relevant and meaningful. But the process
was it a youth audience? I don't understand.
No, it wasn't. Okay. But it was the idea. It was originally supposed to be like outside of the theater in a different location, and that all changed for multiple reasons. But it ended up having this really meaningful purpose that was beyond the intended story. It communicated something, and that had to do with the director Nicola Humpfel and her and Oliver. She works in a lot of different mediums, but the one thing that made this unique that I wish I could have experienced as an audience member, but also you don't fully get on the HD, was all of it was camera work. And so everything I sang was to a camera, and there were two of them. And so I rarely, only once in the whole show, and I specifically chose the moment to not look at the camera, to look at the audience. But what it was is these cameras were hyper zoomed in on our faces, and there was this huge screen behind. So to the audience member, it was like I was speaking every line looking directly in their eyes. And I think that had a huge impact. That didn't translate when you watch it on HD exactly. But this process of like, we got to have a lot of rehearsal time. Playing is what she referred to it as, where we were just doing improv or doing all these exercises that brought out certain things about us or certain movements we did, things that were part of us as individuals, and then got to pair them with characters. And so we got to discover a lot of things that I don't feel like you ever have the time practically to do normally in a normal opera process. And this production also had all the 14 women involved in it, in the cast, were all from a different country. And that wasn't planned, but we utilized that in the show, because we talked about culturally how having children is different in every culture, and how sometimes the importance of losing young children in different cultures. And it ended up, the show had a fundraiser for Unicef. After we had a moment in the show where we broke from the music, and there was a dialogue that was a story that one day we just heard in rehearsal from one of the girls. It was a personal story of her own. And she shared it, and it was about like, I didn't do anything. I saw a young boy walking down the street and he was starving, and I just kept driving. And it's something that was so normal in my everyday life. And there was a point where I realized like, that's not normal. The fact that I'm just like going home and continuing my life and seeing that. And her final sentence, she said, is, and I did nothing. And each person in the cast said that same sentence in their own language. And it was very hard. It was right before I had to sing the aria. And it got me, not only is that like an emotional high point in the show, that furthered it, it made it didn't even pull me out of the character. I mean, it like further put me there in that place. And you said like the emotional,
for people who aren't singers, you can't actually cry and sing at the same time. It's like we have this mechanism. It's based on very tiny little muscles. Like once emotion takes over, you no longer have control over those little tiny muscles.
What's that lump in the throat? Like everyone can relate to having a lump in your throat. Imagine having a lump in your throat and then like your throat is like you trying to sing. It can be a mess. And for me, in every role that a lot of the stuff I sing is not lighthearted always. So there's always a point, like I'm going through it in a moment in what I'm working on right now in Tosca, where I just can't get through it without crying. It's just too much. It's like, and I have to experience that with every show. And then I get to a point where I've like cried it out and I can not disassociate, but I've like felt that. And now it's very personal and like nearby, but I can reference it, but not fully go there, or else what do you do? And I had this weird out of body experience with Suor Angelica. So if you ever see the HD, I mean, we talked about my running mascara at one point. I really did actually cry. And it was just a tear. It was like a single tear. And I'm like, I remember in the moment, the crazy thing about singers and like the 20,000 multitasking things you're doing while you're singing. I remember having this thought like, what? There's a tear? What's happening? And then I got to, deal with that, like, process that at a later time, like what happened.
But it's great because it also mixes with sweat and it looks like you were just losing it from in close up. So it's really effective.
Yeah. I can't fake cries. So it was like, what is happening? Oh my gosh. But yeah, that was such a spectacular, I've made I don't even know if it's a joke. I mean, it's actually true. When the pandemic closed right after that, which was heartbreaking for our community. But I always said, if that's the last thing I did, okay. Like I've really experienced and accomplished something for myself.
Good call. Bad call on Opera Box Score.
Good call, bad call. It's how we end it every time. On the national championship, this game is turning into real sleepers. 9-3, Alabama, halfway through the second. I forgot the national championship takes approximately 2 weeks to play. Oliver Camacho, what do you got for us?
Congratulations, Team Canada and my future husband, Felix Auger-Aliassime. And I finally got around to listening to Fire Shut Up in My Bones from the Met broadcast. I'm sure we're going to talk about it again at some point, but that was great.
Matt Cummings.
Congratulations to one-time friend of the show, sometimes enemy of the show, Tobias
I'm
Wright.
making a heart right here if you can't see
I'm fresh back from celebrating his nuptials last week.
Maybe with COVID.
Maybe, well, definitely not on the way there that I know of, but who can say? It's only been 3 days. Too early to tell.
Wow.
But he sends his love to all of our listeners.
Congratulations, Tobias and Leah. Weston Williams.
Well, my bad call obviously is Proving Up getting canceled by the Lyric. This is true. I literally bought the lovely studio recording of Proving Up. I very soon after I bought it, the Lyric announced that they were doing it. I was so excited. I decided not to listen to it. So it's just been sitting there staring at me while I'm like, I'm just going to listen to it live first. I'm so excited. And they cancel it. And I'm like, ugh. So now I have to actually like open up my CDs and like shuffle them around and put them into the CD player. It's a nightmare.
Getting that plastic off of the case is always the worst. So.
You scrape
Speaking
it
of
against
time capsules.
scrape it against the edge of a hard surface.
Yeah.
Ashlee, Hardgrave.
I just realized that I'm off next week, so listeners, if you don't hear me, it's not because the Russians have me, it's because I actually requested this time off.
But feel free
don't worry.
But feel free to ride against the Russian army if that's something you're into.
Unless on our socials you see the password, which we're going to say is Calliope. Otherwise, I'm fine. It was a really great night at the Golden Globes for music in film. It was so great. West Side Story won Best Picture for musical comedy. Rachel Zegler, Ariana DeBose, and Andrew Garfield all won Globes for musical roles. It was a very exciting time at the Globes, even though they were seen nowhere by nobody.
On HBO Max, you can watch a show called Hard Knocks, which is basically behind the scenes of, in season 1, the Dallas Cowboys, and season 2, the Indianapolis Colts, as they get ready through the preseason for the NFL regular season. It is basically unnarrated, and it is beautifully crafted. And oh my gosh, does it put you into the absolute belly of the beast about what it is to be on an NFL team. And all I could think of the whole time I was watching it was opera and trying to figure out what a show like this could be getting ready for an opera season. It would be phenomenal. Hard Knocks.
That's the musical Phantom of the Opera.
On HBO. That is it for this week's edition of America's Talk Radio Show about opera. Our announcer, he's Norm Woodel, and he's at normwoodel.com. On Facebook, you're going to search for Opera Box Score. Twitter, Instagram, it's at Opera Box Score. Please help us deepen that bench of listeners, liking and sharing our social media posts. Again, if you're watching on TDO, make sure you subscribe to the podcast so that you get the full show. Stitcher, Spotify, you click follow. Apple Podcasts, you just smash that plus sign. Email us your hot takes, your time capsule entry, operaboxscore@gmail.com. Drop us a line, get that beer coaster and lapel pin just for sharing your own hot take. Our creative consultant is Oliver Camacho. Our audio and video editor is Weston Williams. For your co-hosts, Matt Cummings and Ashlee Hardgrave, and our guest, Anne Toomey. I'm George Cederquist, asking you to continue the conversation about opera as you try to keep your good New Year's habits for one more week. We're back with an all-new show next week. You're going to get more opera headlines, more hot takes, and more SEC National Championship teams. So boring. Join us.